Welcome to this update where I'll be running through how you play the Grunts game and rambling on for probably more than an hour I should think as I work through how to play this game. I've had quite a few people online ask for a combination of things. One of them was that they'd like to see more of a Grunts game in action because they're unsure of it and they wanted a little more information. How does it work? How does it play? And the other thing people have been asking is to see some more terrain. So here it is. This is my sort of space station. Well, it's not really a space station, it's really a sort of planetary station, and it's been built up out of a company's resin kit called Ainsty, and some other bits and pieces thrown on there as well. So I'll talk through that first of all before I get stuck in on the Grunts game. There's a few things you can see that people will be familiar with probably already, some of the vehicles and bits and pieces on here, and I shall start to run through those now. So starting over on this side, this is an old crow building. In fact, it's if I move around the camera here, try and do this without creating a disaster. It's from a company called Old Crow Models in the UK. You can see it has a removable roof, and the interior is quite thick resin actually there, you can see, compared to how most people make their resin terrain these days. And that's obviously representing a garage, and I've just given it a different coloured roof spray job there to make it look a bit more distinctive. If I was using this layout at a show game, often I would put a prize or something in the end there, so it's handy as well as for storing figures in there during a game as a surprise. I also use that to put a prize at the end of a show game that people can retrieve from there. That's actually an Old Crow Models small vehicle as well. In fact, I never really finished painting that. I just got on there as to look like a dusty old vehicle that's been ruined by being left out in some sort of Martian air for too long. The train board is made from MDF, and I'd hazard a guess actually that it's about, because I've just realised I haven't got my ruler with me, it's about a centimetre in size. Actually, I've got the ruler here, but I've got my inches ruler, so it's kind of, actually it's about half an inch actually for the people in America that still use the medieval measurement system, so which this game does as well, by the way. It's all in inches if you're interested. And in terms of the terrain on top of there, that's a mixture I've put on of glue, PVA glue. Maybe I've built that up there with a bit of PVA mixed with sand as well. And it's worth mentioning that I built this about probably 8.5 years ago now, so I've only got very vague memories of the creation of this. But I know that was PVA and sand and different styles of gravel. And in fact, there's this sort of a dirty sort of line you can see on there as well. That would have been done with some of the pigments, of which I've got some here. The various companies like MIG and AK Interactive, I think they all make pigments. And this stuff which I bought when I built this terrain actually, so that was about 8.5 years ago. So 2005, 2006-ish. I got this sort of stuff called Stardust. All it is weathering pigment, and that colour there is called Black Smut. I may have used some of that mixed with some other things on there before I sealed it with a final spray of dull coat, and it just gives it that really dirty look. In fact, if you have a look on this terrain also, I'll move it back around again, you can see there's darker lines in between these panels here. That's that black smut used on there, probably mixed with thinners from Tamiya, and then run into there. That would have been the last thing I did on here, probably before I did some dry brushing. And also this entire layout was in fact done using an airbrush, just for speed really. If you're building something of this size, if you were going to paintbrush everything in here, it would be tricky. So you can see, if I point out here an area like that wall, you can see on top of the grey I've gone on with a sort of lighter effect, and I've done that on all of these squares on here as well. You can see a sort of lighter end to the panel, the metal panel on there. So, right, a little bit more information about the bits and pieces in here. So the garage, which I pointed out over here, is an old Crow one that's been glued down. MDF is medium density fiberboard, it's called, which is the wood that I've used on the base. This has been stored in the garage, on and off, and in a shed for now, I'd say, like I said, about 8 years. So that MDF has stayed rock solid, it's stayed clean, and it hasn't warped at all. But obviously that's that 1/2 inch size, so if you were using a thinner MDF, it may have more chance of flexing over time. The terrain items here, that the resin that it's built from is from Ainstey. They're still going strong in the UK, and this range is called Down Below. And the reason they called it Down Below was because the walls were slightly shorter. So if you have a look at a 15mm, that's actually a big 15mm model, but you can see it doesn't go quite up to the height on there. Now Ainstey do a lot bigger walls and systems, which they put together for a whole variety of different settings, but this one, being down below, is meant to sort of represent the pipes and things on a lower deck of a spaceship or in a space sort of station. So that's why you get the lower walls, which are more ideal for 15mm. Now, as an interesting tip, the various ranges that they do at Ainstey, and of which they have quite a few, have various different patterns to the flooring. So in the Down Below range they might have these sort of pipe sections that you can use. You can sort of see one in there. And then in another range they might have sort of these larger panels. Now every single one of these squares is a 3cm by 3cm section. So the MDF boards, like if we take that one in the middle there and just lift it up so you can see, that's a 30cm by 30cm board section. So as you scale up with the 3x3 sections, you can go right out to the full 30cm. Now of course that allows you to make sure you get the right amount of pieces if you're building a board section, but that's not everything you have to do, because you will face issues with the resin. As you can see along here, I've put a section of Plastruct, I think it's called, or there's a whole range of these sort of plastic hard little structures you can get, and I've had to build that into there, and I've had to build it into other sections. You can probably just see some little piping along here. Now that's had to go in so that it makes it up to the full 30cm by 30cm, and there's the whole line along the back there, which you can see has been built from a section of plastic hard as well. Now that takes time, but generally speaking it all goes together quite nicely as a set of terrain. And if you stick to that 30 by 30 size, it means that you can use any of their combinations of pieces, like these larger sections. If I just bring that down here, you can see one larger piece in there, and so that's obviously 60 by 90 because it takes up the 3 of the sections. Putting those in obviously makes things a bit quicker, because you're not having to put these individual sort of tiles into the system. Now in terms of gluing it down, I used a material called No More Nails, and that was actually recommended by Ainstey at the time, and they used that to, here we come back up to the full size, they used that for all of their terrain in show games and when they were putting stuff together for display. So obviously it sticks hard. This stuff stayed together for a very long time. Now I have got, and they're not very visible actually, but you can probably just see a tiny white line over here, a few cracked areas actually that have appeared over the years, and I think now after about 8 years of this in operation I probably need to give it a bit of a refresh. But I wouldn't want to retire it, because this resin is expensive. It's expensive stuff, and obviously once you've invested in this kind of kit you want to keep using it for future games. Now I bought this and built this for 15mm gaming, but I actually like the lower walls and would work even for the 28mm sort of size of gaming as well, mostly because if you've got these tighter, narrower corridors and you had higher walls on them, so you're looking at probably about another 3cm in height on some of the higher sections, it's much harder to get your hands and fingers in to pick up the models. So So certainly you can obviously use this down below size along with some of the larger pieces as well and mix and match. In fact, the doorways and things are pretty much flexible for 28mm as well. So coming to the doorways, actually, if I go and zoom in on this one down here, so you'll get a good view there. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to do when I wanted to create a sort of airlocked game was have these doors in place, and these are all available from Aintsty as part of the set. And you can see they're a piece of resin. I've just sort of sprayed it blue and put some weathering and washes and a bit of a dry brush on there. In fact, the reason I did them blue was just so that they'd stand out on the terrain, so you can see if I look over there, there's another one. Here's another door here as well. So in terms of gameplay, it's great for making figures and things. And that's actually upside down, I think. Oh, that's the right way up. Making some figures take actions and things to open doors. So we've all played some of the classic old Games Workshop games which required doors to be blasted. So you could add rules for blasting the doors as well as maybe locking the doors or permanently welding them. All those kind of activities that you'd normally get in a sort of classic sci-fi movie. Now, I made some extra doors which I just made out of plastic card, because these are actual sort of proper airlocked sections and they come from Aintsty and allow you to sort of build them into the layout. But there are doors like this door here which don't have anything supplied from Aintsty to provide a doorway, so all I did was make those bits of plastic card, and it slots in there nicely. Obviously there's a slight angle to it, but it does look like a door, and it just allows you to potentially add another doorway into the game for a bit of fun. Just in terms of something to do with the design overall, if I zoom back out a bit here, it's not very well in focus, but this was intended over here to be like an airlocked area. I've got sort of double door areas, another door, double area at the back here, and a much larger bulkhead door, and this was just made, I made that out of bits and pieces. In fact, you can see their floor tiles. This is an Old Crow pipe from their 6mm range. I've just glued that on there with super glue and a couple on the back to make it look like a large bulkhead door. In fact, Aintsty do a lot of sort of doorways and things in the larger 28mm scale, which could have worked, but I sort of built that one as that sort of big, as a big objective there really, in terms of it being an airlocked vehicle type access area. In fact, at the moment I've got an old a Ground Zero Games VTOL, Roach VTOL in there, one of the APC personnel carrier ones. So, what else can I say about the terrain? Well, I did some detailing on. You can see again, Aintsty provides some of these sort of melted sections that look like either they've been destroyed by weaponry or maybe melted by alien activity. They do they do various bits and pieces, raised sections and things which I've built into here. This was, I think I built this as like a prison cell area with these sort of 3 areas at the back in terms of they could be locked by doorways and things. In fact, I haven't got doors in there because of this game. I've just sort of thrown it together quickly to give it a go. So getting into some of the details here, these little bits and pieces, this is a computer from a company called Curacao, which is a small resin piece. Classic, you can see the sort of row of servers in there in this tiny sort of display, and then a sort of cabinet entry on the back there. They do a whole sort of range of terrain which are perfect for this sort of layout. A little table there. In fact, there's a sort of sci-fi sofa type thing. These are actually painted quite hastily, but I used the brighter colours because I thought they'd stand out on the terrain. This is Aintsty, not Aintsty, sorry, this is Curacao again. It's like a little computer console. One that's quite retro styled. And it's just handy to have those around on the table so that there's something to do with them. There's a bit of a game to sort of, maybe you'd have an objective where it was a computer console or something and you needed access to it, so it's something to put on the board. And these pieces are very old, and in fact they're dusty as well. I think I even painted them before I painted this layout, but they were from a friend of mine, Ray Turner, from Wales, and we did a swap or something for these, and I've no idea where they came from, but they came with a set of sort of corridor pieces as well, and they look like some sort of 3D display consoles. I could have done a better job painting them actually, but they're just handy. They fit in there and they look like some sort of console area. So if I'm going to talk now about the Grunts game and what I'm going to play here, so you can get an understanding of how the game plays. Obviously I'm doing this as a demo on my own, so it's a bit of a solo game. I'll be making decisions for both sides. There's one aspect of that which will be out of my hands, so to speak, and that's the activation sequence. In the normal game of Grunts, and I'll show you the rulebook now. Here's the rulebook, which is available in print on the Wargames Vault. So if you pop over to wargamesvault.com, you can see the full Grunts game in all its glory. It's available in PDF and in this printed copy. I have to remind myself how many pages it's up to, but we're up to about 135 pages in there, and it's had some fantastic help creating these rules from the community, which we set up on the Yahoo group, but now it's sort of spread onto a forum as well. And you can see the sort of quality that's gone into there. There's artwork, there's sort of backgrounds for the factions, and they've all got various different IDs, so you can see how the different camos and things would work for the different factions. Of course it's got a set of rules in there as well. In fact, the rules are sort of, where are we? About 110 pages of rules actually, although don't let that put you off. There's a lot of optional rules, there's a lot of detail in here on how to build the different unit types. So for example, this is an air attack vehicle, and it takes you through the stages of how that's built, with selecting the size, the various, whether it's helicopter, prop VTOL, jet VTOL, grav based, the weapon mounts, and then how you purchase the different weapons to fit on there. To make that easy, the actual rules are supplemented with a package, an application called Barracks, and that allows you to do that unit creation, of which there's quite a few different types in there. In fact, I can show you how all the different types, when you start earlier in the rules, there is a quick table which shows all the different unit types which can be made in the Barracks application, so ranging from the commander through to various mechas, artillery, air support, air attack, fighters, tanks, monsters, super heavy tanks and super heavy air support. All of those are supported in the Barracks application, which makes it really quick to get into the game. And by that I mean, once you've used the Barracks app, you can print these cards out. I'm sorry that's not very well zoomed in, but it gives you the general idea that once you've created the spec for your character or unit type, so this one in fact has a mecha on here as well, you can see the weaponry it's got, its skill, guard and soak, which are the three sort of key stats for vehicles, and then obviously for grunts they have a few more skills in terms of softer skills, because they have shoot and assault and a mental statistic, which obviously vehicles don't in the game. So now I'm sort of confusing myself as to where to go, because I haven't planned this extremely well, and I haven't got an amazing assistant with me, but I will dive in again and just talk about a little bits about the rules in terms of starting up the game. So let's go back to a standard game setup. So I've tried to make it as simple as possible in the rules, with flowcharts and things on some of the key areas, which I think we've had quite a few people on the forums and the site say once they've played about twice, everything sort of flows. You don't need to refer to these charts every time. They're just a sort of a primer, really. I think interestingly, from a game design perspective, when I was building this, I was very keen to make sure that people could understand some of these basics. I mean, this is very simple here. It's just select your armies at a set point size, agree the layout, make a deployment roll to see, using your commander's mental statistic, to see who goes first. Those kind of basics, they're usually in a game system, but in here I've sort of made it even more easier to read through how you do the turn sequence with initiating the turn, who goes first, etc. So all that kind of good stuff's in there, and combined with the unit builder, with the barracks unit builder, it allows you to sort of pick and choose any models from any company, ranging from Ground Zero Games, Critical Mass Games, Curasan, Rebel Miniatures, 15mm UK, and that's and Art Crime Design as well. So there's quite a few other options for you out there for models in this 15mm scale. I just grab a couple of models. You can see the sort of size, how that sort of fits in my hand there. This is a Ground Zero Games APC. I've put a little plasma turret on there. This was actually a hard metal one, but quite a few of the companies like Critical Mass Games have resin models as well. And then you can even mix and match other things in. If I move this around, you can see down the back there, this is a Japanese candy toy. Is it Konami or someone, or Bandai, I'm not sure, but these are sort of things you can see on eBay. It came pre-painted, and they just supplement the layout. You could paint it up yourself, or you could just use it as it comes. In fact, I wasn't intending to use that model in this game. It's just something I put on the board for part of the layout. So, jumping back again, sorry for the rambling, and hopefully you're paying attention at this point. Normally in the Grunts game, you have a sort of an I go, you go turn sequence. Now it's slightly different from traditional I go, you go, in that you activate a single unit at a time, rather than activating your whole force and moving them forward and then doing the whole force's shoot. So if I was activating this squad over here with these sort of powered armour marines, which are from Curasan, and the rest of my force over here, I would move, shoot, or move, open the door, and then move again through here in terms of activating and completing that full unit's go before moving on to another one. Now there's two reasons I did that in the game. One is I prefer to see the units play out individually, and from a cleanness of how you approach the game, you're moving those, you're shooting, and you're finishing them before you move on to another. It's very easy in a game where you're moving everything at the same time and then shooting everything at the same time to potentially get a bit lost with, or have I shot those, have I finished that one? And if you do it this nice clean way, you get to make the move and then the shoot, then move on to another one. And the second reason was because it works with the varied different activation sequences in the game in the optional rules. Now the one I'm going to use here is the optional rules, which include a card based turn sequence. Because I'm playing solo on my own and I'm representing the aliens on the board as well, I'm going to use these cards to determine the card sequence, the game sequence. So what could happen in this turn is, as this solo play, I could assign that one to that unit, and then maybe, actually if I move it around, you'll be able to get another squad in there. This is an enemy unit over there. Drop that card on, and now that's random to me. Obviously I'll switch it over. We've got a 6 of hearts there, and we've got a king of diamonds. Now obviously the king is a higher suit. That unit would activate before this one I did on the 6. And if I just show you in the rules, for those that like this sort of more chaotic random turn sequence, actually I will flip to the right page, which I've marked. We have this optional rules with the alternative activation. Now what that means is you could actually not use those cards and do an alternate activation between squads. So this person's go, I could activate this squad, and then that squad only would be what we completed for my sort of turn sequence for this force. I'd then pass it over to the opponent, and they would activate just one unit before then passing it back to me, and then I choose another one to activate. Obviously the key thing about that is that you've got to remember what you have activated and what you haven't, because you're passing the game turn activation back and forth between two players. The other way round, there's two types of card activation I've put into the rules. One of them is this random method, like I've done now. Put the cards down, they're just dished out to all of the forces on the table, and then they're flipped over. Of course, the alternate way of doing that is that you dish out the number of cards to each individual player, representing the number of units they've got. So if I had 5 units on the table, I'd get 5 cards. Then it's up to that player to say, well, I'm going to assign the ace to this squad because I certainly want them to go first, and I might put the 6 or the king or something on this one because I wanted them to go second. Now, in secret, your opponent is doing the same thing, so they could have a flip. They could have a flip over and it would be a king, right at a key point where you thought, oh my god, I really needed that action there first. Unfortunately, the other player has picked a higher card. Now, hopefully I'm not rounding there. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, but if I show you the bit in the rules again, there's just a representation of the high to low suit in terms of rank. So if you happen to have 2 cards, one's a 5 of spades and one's a 5 of diamonds, you'd find out quite easily that the spades would potentially go first, because the 5 being the higher ranking card on the spade. Obviously aces, we have a ace boon section as well. These are just simple things that if you get an ace card and assign it to a squad, or have it randomly assigned if we're playing as I am here, you'd get some bonuses. Like I'd have the ace of spades. It has an effect called the blind spot, which means the units slip through the battlefield this activation and is difficult to spot due to battle dust, sun glare or other influence, so they get a +2 guard when targeted by ranged weapons. That's just handy. It just gives it a little bit of an edge, really, in terms of how you operate the units, and in terms of battlefield fun and chaos, it meant that that unit got through and was a bit harder to hit that turn. Oh, had an accident there with the computer screens falling, the computer console falling down. So just to recap again, I'm playing the game with the optional turn sequence using the card mechanism, and I'm using, within that card mechanism, I'm using the method which allows you to assign the cards randomly to all of the units for both sides, so I'm not going to know who's going to go first in terms of the squads and the layout. And I'll be doing that with these plastic cards, which I find are quite easy to use and assign without covering all of the models up, obviously, because it's only covering up those sections. Can't remember where I bought those, but they came from a shop online, I think, and they're just perfect for this kind of gaming, because you put it on and it's not completely obscuring the table with a massive card in white, which could be a little bit distracting. Now, in terms of the forces, what I'm using here, inside the base, of which you can see if I move it around, I have some alien forces down here. These are from the company called Kurasan in the US, and they're sort of traditional alien types. They're called space, their range, they call them space demons. You have some of them with sort of alien tongues coming out, and they do a whole set of those, some of them with nice hammerhead style, and loads of different sculpts, which is what's really nice about them. I like the sort of dynamic look to them. I think they've got 3 or 4 different sets of those in the range. I've only got down here sort of a dozen or so models, and I've got this one, which it's either the Queen or the King model, which I'm using as the sort of prime queen in this particular scenario. Now, these aliens are actually not going to start. Oops, that's going down. Train failure already there. And they're not actually going to start in that back room. They're going to start underneath these sensor markings. In fact, they say bug detected on those, which I bought. I think they're from Gale Force 9, is it, or something? And I've just dropped those down, and when my sort of marine force comes into a room with these, I'm going to remove them and roll a d6. and when I roll that d6 it'll be 1 to 3 models. So on a 1 or 2 I'd get 1 alien, on a 3 or 4 I'd get 2, and a 5 or 6 I'd get 3 aliens appear in that room. So I'd replace this coloured marker with the aliens. And in terms of their statistics, they've got fantastic assault skills up at 7, which is very, very high in the Grunts rules, meaning you don't want to get up close, but they don't have any ranged weapons, whereas the Queen, I mean, sorry, it's not going to be very easy to see on the video, but she has an acid spit as well. And I've called these in the Grunt setting, they're called the Prime Aliens. Obviously you don't have to use the Kurasan models, which I'm using here, to represent the Prime, but you can use any range of models. I think quite a few companies have various different alien types. The sort of good guy side, I'm using a combination of models. I've got a faction again, the Commonwealth Navy, in the Grunt setting, and I'm calling these guys sort of Commonwealth Power Armour troopers, and these are sort of power armour from Kurasan. And again, they have great assault statistics, but they're a few more points than what you'd normally pay for traditional models, because they have the sort of power armour level of soak, the soak being what level of damage they can take, like their sort of armour factor. And they have a power fist, auto rifle, and a plasma blaster, so they have quite well organised, well, good quality weaponry. Compared that to these East Hyadim trade forces, and I've represented the vehicles on here, but I'm not actually going to use them in the game. I'm just going to use the actual trade troops, which are listed down here. They're a standard Grunts troop. You can see them, in fact, if I make more room on here. They're lining up at this doorway, and they're lining up at the doorway at the top of the table as well. So these are Ground Zero Games models. They're from their NAC range of troops, and I'm just using them here for East Hyadim Trade Company forces. Now in the background in Grunts, I won't bore you with all the detail, but the East Hyadim are similar to the East India Trade Company of the sort of history of England, of Great Britain, and they're sort of a space-faring corporation with interests, planetary interests, and obviously I've given them a kind of a British history in terms of their connection to maybe the East India Company, in that they're a corporation or a company that have a private army like the East India Company did in the days of old. So lots more detail on that in the rules and how that sort of background fits together. But here I'm just using these forces. I just wanted a card to represent this particular squad. The other models, of which I've got a few on the table, I've got there's another faction in the Grunts game called the Arm, which are kind of the sort of nasty sort of corporation, very right-wing sort of tendencies. And I've got down here some armed scientists, and these are actually these little guys I'm using down here, and they're sort of these suited up hazardous material suits. And I'm going to say that they've been kind of experimenting on some kind of alien genome on here for this Prime aliens, and they've got caught up with them, so they're actually now trying to defend the aliens in the base. The reason again I'm doing that, I'm just trying to balance the game out, because the aliens don't have any guns. I wanted a squad on there with some guns just to show you some firing between squads. And here's a spider drone, which is from Ground Zero Games. I've just put them together with a shield as well, and this is a nice sort of representation of the shield in action, because when I've built it with the barracks application, I've just added force shields to this specialist spider drone, and that's a vehicle specialist type of unit, which means as a vehicle specialist it just has these three basic stats, which makes it easy to play. It has a skill which you'd use to shoot its laser weaponry. It has a guard, which is the difficulty in hitting it, and it has a soak, which is the amount of damage points you have to equal or get and higher than to do any damage to it. And also it has damage boxes down the bottom there, which has 4 damage boxes. The Grunts models in the squad, like this armed scientist squads down here, although there's lots of boxes listed, that's just so that if you had 4 squads on the table, you could have each squad represented. They only have 1 damage point each, so there's a squad of 6, and there's 6 boxes on there just to represent that that's how many wounds they're going to take. Well, actually, each individual takes 1 wound each. And I've got another model here for a medic, which in fact I wasn't going to include in the game, but there are medics in the Grunts rules as well, and mechanics or engineers, which allow you to repair vehicles. So the medics allow you to try and bring a squad member back from the brink. They can restore a certain number of waxed tokens from a squad. I'm not using a medic in this game. So there we go. All I've done, these are Ultra Pro protector cards, so when you use the barracks application and print your cards to play with, they're all easily accessible. You don't have to buy these cards separately for the game. You can just print these directly from barracks. They have all the details printed on there. That means you can get straight into a game, and then you can reuse these, because if you use a marker pen on there to mark the damage, you can rub it off because it's on the plastic sleeve. There's one other feature. Did I say this had force fields? Yes. So this one, it shows you on the card, and again the barracks application will print like this. It shows you that it normally has a soak of 12, but its force shields have boost that soak up to 15, which means this is really hard nut to crack. But once that shield's overloaded and you've done even 1 damage point to it, the shield is removed. It can recharge the shield, but that's at the expense of shooting or moving. So obviously this is what the East Hyden troops have brought along to walk in front of them. The spider droid just makes it a little bit more, a little bit safer for them as they approach the aliens or whatever else is inside. So just earlier on I was mentioning these cards and the fact I'm using the card-based turn sequence. And just another tip, if you had a larger area than this is only just over, this is about 3.5 foot by 3.5 foot, this entire table area. If you had enough space along the edge of your board, you could lay out your cards. Now if you had those cards laid out in some space that wasn't covering up the terrain area, when you dish out your cards to the various units, you can just put them on like that, and that means obviously you're not having to spread the cards around on the table. You're literally flipping them around on top of that unit, and then you could just sort of slide that underneath, which means you then knew when this was playing in terms of the turn and activation sequence. It's just a bit of an advice really. I haven't got any room in here. I'm in my hobby room and I've got hardly any room for a terrain layout. I'd normally play in the garage or somewhere, but I thought for the sake of doing this recording I'd bring it into the hobby room and lay out the small terrain section. If I had that space, as I was saying, I'd use these along the side of the table to assign those cards to them. So continuing on the sort of accessories and how to play the game, obviously one key thing is to have a tape measure, because the game uses inches. The other vital thing, which I don't think that many players that play Grunts actually do, I'm sure some people do, but that's to have matching pairs of dice, like I have down here. If you don't have the matching pairs, it makes rolling the attacks for squads, if you are rolling individually and not grouping fire, it makes that rolling a lot more cumbersome, because you can't match up the pairs. Now quite often in the sort of sci-fi gaming world, the attacks, whether they be an assault or a shooting type attack, are done with individual d6s. But in the Grunts game, I look at the card, and again it's a handy reference to have these while you're playing. Actually these guys, I've only assigned them a shooting skill of 4. Now if that squad over here, which is this hazmat armed scientists group, which are trying to protect the prime alien seed in this base, if they wanted to take a shot at something on their activation, that's their base skill of 4, which is not very visible, sorry, but if I brought it up any closer I think it would go out of focus. Well, you can just about see the 4 on there for their shoots. So if I was firing just one guy at the front, I would take that 4 and add it to a roll of 2d6. So that's a fantastic roll. He's got a total of 10 with the addition of his shoot skill, 14. Now if I have a look around at some of the other models in play here, I can see, for example, the spider drone is very agile, and I've assigned a guard of 14 to it. Now fortunately he rolled a total of 14, which means he would got a hit on here, and in the Grunts game the shooting and the damage is separate, so it's not a case of just counting how many points higher than the guard I just got there. It's basically, that's my targeting and shooting roll for that one hazmat guy on the front there. He's hit something with a guard of 14, which in this case would be the spider droid. And now the next thing he has to do is beat the soak to do any damage. And if I go back to the hazmat team, again you can't see it very easily there, but he's got a laser rifle, one of the most basic sort of weapons you can use, and it only has a damage of 6. However, I take that damage and I add the next roll again, so damage of 6 plus 4, 10. Now of course that's not enough to do any damage to the spider drone because its soak is 12, but if I'd rolled a 12 I would have equalled its soak, which is 1 point of damage. So if you equal the soak when you're rolling the damage roll, that means you get 1 point through. And that's essentially how the entire game works against vehicles or against squad members. You only need to do that 1 point of damage if you're targeting, say, one of these East Hyden Trade Forces chaps, and if you target something like a vehicle, which I'll just bring up those statistics for those by the beauty of preparation. So here we have one I've prepared earlier, and this is the Copperhead, medium wheeled. Actually it's in terms of its size it's light, but it's a support vehicle, and you can see it has a whole row of damage boxes along here. So if you got equal to its soak of 15, because it soaks heavier than a normal trooper being a vehicle, that would do 1 point of damage and you'd fill one box in. Obviously what you want to do is more than 1 point of damage when you hit. So if you were hitting it with another vehicle, for example, so if I was shooting from this Copperhead, which does 11 damage with its anti-infantry automatic weapon, I would then have a look, roll 2d6, I might roll 10, that would be a total of 21, and of course that's 6 over the soak. And because you get 1 damage if you hit on the 15, that would be a total of 7 damage through, and I'd fill in 7 of these boxes. So basically it just makes it, well, I guess if I step back from how I was designing the game in the first place, I was playing a lot of the online type multiplayer games, the things like StarCraft, Command and Conquer, where the represented tanks and troops on the table often have those sort of damage bars that slowly work their way down to 0. So I wanted something like that in the game. I didn't want tanks to go pop or vehicles to go pop, and quite a few of even the biggest main popular war games for sci-fi type setups, or even World War II type ones, have tanks that once you've overloaded the armour, they do just tend to pop rather than degrade, which is what I was looking for in this. And if you hit the critical marks, there is a chance you make a roll that you could damage the armour, engine or tech on that vehicle. And when you fill one of those in, they have a negative effect. Obviously on the armour is reduced, so you get a lower soak factor. If the engine's hit, it can't drive at the flank double move anymore, it can only make a single move. And if you damage the tech, you fill in the tech damage box on the card, and it means that vehicle then shoots with a negative modifier as well, because something's gone wrong in the gyros or something on there, which means it's harder to target with that unit. So that's basically the principle behind Grunts. It's still a light game, I think, even though you might be degrading those models and slowly damaging them if you're putting a lot in the field of battle. Obviously here I've only got a smaller number of models, but that degrading means that you might have a favourite model, or you might build an assault class vehicle, and it just lasts that much longer in the game. Now back to, you're jumping back away, that's going to keep falling over if I leave it there, so back to the theory of why you need these different coloured dice, and that's because if you were firing that whole squad of 6, you can do it in one go. I just roll it down and then I just pair the dice off. And if you then already worked out what your target guard was, so if I know their shoot is 4 and I was trying to target a guard of say 12, I'd know I need 8 on the dice, so a 7's not going to hit, that 8 is going to hit there with those 2, that 6 isn't going to hit, that 7 there isn't going to hit, but I've got 3 hits there. So of rolling those paired dice, in fact there's 12 dice have been rolled, I can see if this squad over here with a shoot of 4 were targeting a squad with a guard of 12, I need that 8 to hit, and they've done it with 3 of those models in the unit. So then you grab those and you say to yourself, right, now I'm doing the damage roll, and you get the factor for the laser weapon, its damage, which will be on its card if you've printed them from the barracks application. So I can see it has a damage of 6, and if I was targeting the spider drone, which has a soak of 12, and I roll the dice, that the remaining pairs in my hand, well, that's incredible. There you go, when you're doing this sort of random thing you end up rolling incredible rolls. That's very unlikely to roll that level, but if I count this up, I've got 11 plus the damage of 6, which is a total of 17. Now if its soak was 12, they only have to reach 12 to do 1 point of damage, and then the extra 5 points means a total of 6 damage has gone over the top of that soak. So just to repeat that again, if you equal the soak, you do 1 point of damage. So I know with this first fire of this group of 3, I've already got 11 plus its damage of, let's see, the laser rifle is 6. So actually 17 in total, and you can see there 6 if I equal the soak for the 1 damage plus the 6 over. That means I would be filling in every single one of those damage boxes on that spider droid. So again, lucky roll there with those. The other 2 rolls are kind of wasted because I would have already destroyed this target with that roll. Now if I rolled more reasonably and I hadn't had some sort of dice gods on my side when I rolled those and got 3 11s in a row, I may have done less damage. I may have just scraped through 1 or 2 points on it. Now it's also worth remembering the spider droid would normally have its force shields up, which would give it a soak of 15, which makes it a little bit harder nut to crack as well, as I was saying earlier. So lucky rolls there, and 1 destroyed spider droid if I was making that roll sequence. I'm not going to go into all of the fine details of the rules in this overview of the game, but you can actually group fire as well, so you can select that whole range of models there and fire 1 single pair of dice, and there's a modifier for counting up the other models that are kind of all focusing their fire in on one particular target, which means you're no longer rolling that big set of paired dice. You'd be rolling 1 pair of dice for the attack from that whole squad, and it increases the amount of damage and obviously increases the chance to hit because of the focus fire from everybody shooting. Now the benefits of that are that if you're shooting at a heavier, larger target like a Grunt squad firing at a vehicle like this one over here, there's a higher chance of them plinking a couple of damage points through, even though they've only got sort of light arms. So that's one thing that speeds up the overall game. If you were playing a much larger battle, you could avoid having to pick up all these dice as I'm doing here and making that roll. But just a reminder, in case you didn't spot it earlier, Great idea to go out and look on eBay for some paired coloured dice, because it speeds up the gameplay no end, and you won't be in tears rolling individually, because you can roll them all at once and then just pair them off for each individual shooter. So now in this section I shall dive into talking about the game starting off. So traditionally in a game there's the usual dice off of a commander rolling against the other commander just to see who gets the first activation. There's also points for all of the various different units. I'm actually terrible for ignoring points and just getting stuck in my game, because I'm not as fussed about it as some people are, but obviously in the Grunts rules I developed a point system that's based off the back of calculations for their armour and various other different factors, which is sort of balanced out. In fact, I think I spent about 300 hours in a spreadsheet with a lot of help from the community again, developing those points. They're not perfect, but I think they're a reasonable guide to get you into a game. If you're one of those really fussy people that likes a points balanced game, they're definitely a good guide. However, what I tend to do with things like this is just get stuck in with a game, generally try and sort of count up the points and see if they're equal. I think in this game I'm also playing it slightly different as a solo player. So for example, I'm doing that reveal of the bugs with these, so the alien primes are going to be revealed when I go into a room, so they're kind of unlimited as well as in the Marines and the East Hyden Trade Company that are coming in here with their forces are going to be facing sort of unlimited numbers of these as they roam around, and I flip another one of these tokens into the game. Now that's not normally how you'd play. Just showing you on this sort of terrain layout that you can play a smaller scale battle rather than having lots of troops on an open set of terrain. It plays slightly differently in here, and obviously also has the models in this kind of reveal process where I'm going to roll a dice to see how many are in there. A couple of other items. This loader in here is from Kurasan, and one of the nice features of the Grunts game again is that you can sort of commandeer vehicles or any other things that you've got on the battlefield, because the grunt squads themselves and leaders or commanders have a skill factor, which means they could climb into a vehicle and use their skill to operate the guns or other weaponry on there. In this instance I kind of like the idea of a showdown between the sort of alien queen and the loader, so I put the loader in there just in case someone manages to climb in there and get into some action. Now what I'm going to do with this video is I'm going to do a part 2 which goes into a bit more detail about the fight, but I will start it now so you get to have a feel for how the game plays, but I don't want to make this video go on for much longer than it already has, otherwise you'd be falling asleep anyhow. So here we go, the battle sequence starting off. So just a reminder again that I'm using the card-based activation here, which means I won't be dicing for initiative to see who goes first. In fact, what I'll be doing is just randomly dishing out these cards. Now the traditional game, as I mentioned earlier, uses an alternate activation type process, and I'm playing with the optional rules which are in the rulebook, which allow you to use cards. So here I go, I'm just sort of dishing them out. I don't know what's underneath there, and realistically if I was doing this I should really give like the enemy models like that one, like I've given my one force to there, then dish one out there, dish one out onto the grunt squad there, one for the spider droid, and another one over there on that grunt squad. And in fact I'm going to assign one card to all of the alien tokens, otherwise I'd be here forever doing it, and obviously I'm not going to move those either until they're revealed. So there we go, I'll just drop that down on a location over there so I can see. In fact I'll put it on that token so you can see in the frame what I'm doing. So I'm not going to, after I've used those, I'm not going to shuffle them back onto this deck, because I want things like the aces, as I mentioned earlier. They give boons to some of the squads if you get an ace card. I want those to sort of slowly be pulled up from that deck, so I'm going to, after this turn, discard those cards. So I'll flip this over. We have a king there, so that's an alien squad going very early on. We have a 4. 5 with diamonds. We've got an ace over there for the grunt squad, and a 2 and a 3 over there. So in terms of the sequence, I think I mentioned before, I'll just pile it out again just so you can see what's going on in the rulebook. This is the traditional cards suit in terms of the sequence. So you have the spades, hearts, diamonds, and then clubs. Now what that means essentially is that when you have say a 5 of diamonds there and a 4 of clubs down here, you would just go, oh well, the 5's the higher number, that would activate before I'd activate this squad on the 4. However, if these were both the same number, so I had a 5 of diamonds, and if that was a 5 of clubs, or a 5 of, actually just say 5 of clubs, I would obviously have the same numeric value. So who goes first? Well, that's when you just look at the normal traditional card sequence, high to low suit rank. So basically, if you had a 5 of diamonds and a 5 of clubs, it's the 5 of diamonds that takes priority. And I think most people that know cards know that there is a sequence in there. And obviously it's easy to follow once you've played a few times. You know which sequence is what when you get an equal number. And also I managed to get an ace of hearts. So that means this unit's got a boon. This doesn't always come up, but it means this squad can ignore one wax condition applied to the squad this turn. And if attacked a vehicle, the soak will go up to +2. And it's just an unfortunate placement of enemy damage, which means any incoming fire means their soak's a bit higher. Now, if I was playing the card sequence where you dish the cards to the player rather than this completely chaotic method, it would be the player that could then say, okay, well, I've got an ace in my hand. Secretly, I'm not going to show my opponent, but I'm going to put the ace down on, say, this squad here. And that would allow them to sort of influence the game with the cards that they've been issued. But again, someone else in another squad may have an ace of a higher suit rank. Okay, so I know that squad there for the game have got a +2 to their soak. In fact, one thing I didn't do, and I forgot, I've got a commander model at the back here. You can just see her. So she should, because she activates on her own, she should have a card as well. So I just randomly put one down for her too. So she's got a queen. Now, over to activation. So basically, it would alternate between players because it's whoever's got the highest suit. So obviously, I can see here straight of all, I've got down here a king for the models representing the alien prime species that I have been hidden by those bug counters. Now what I will do with those, and this is something I haven't shown already actually, but there's various counters for conditions in the Grunts game, and I'm just going to give them an Overwatch condition. And I'm just going to say, for the sake of this quick game to show, to demo the rules, I'm going to say that they're basically always going to go on Overwatch. It's going to apply to every token on the board, just to make that quick. Otherwise I'd be going around and trying to manage the movement of a set of plastic counters, which isn't much fun. So the other counters in the Grunts game which are important are the waxed condition. As I understand it, waxed is slang that's been used in the recent Gulf and Iraq-Afghanistan wars, and that just represents when someone's been wiped out. So I use that in the rules to represent when a model in a unit's been injured, and you put a waxed token next to the actual model that's been damaged. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can use medics in the rules. When that squad next activates, any waxed tokens that are on it will mean one dead model for each waxed token, so you remove them one by one. However, if there was a medic that activated first nearby, they could come over and try and save those models with a wax token and remove the wax counters from that squad. So that's just a very simple way of meaning that you can use a medic in the rules and bring back some models from the brink. So essentially, as I was saying before, in terms of the card suits, the aces are high, and that does mean that this actually activates first. and the king would be second in line after the ace, in fact. So jumping over to here, I'm going to activate that friendly squad of East Highland trade forces. Now the Grunts rules have basically 2 actions for each squad. Now you can double a move, a 4-inch move, which is the standard for Grunts, so you could double that to 8, which would be both actions used, or you could use a single move of 4 inches and then shoot. Obviously what I'm going to do here is, I've got someone right up against the door, you can't see it there. He's going to use 1 action to open that door. I'm not saying any of the doors or anything are locked in this game, so basically he's used 1 of his actions. He's got another 4-inch move after that because he was against the door. I'm going to move him up against the other door, and then the other guys are going to come in a line formation behind him, and that's their activation complete. Now in terms of where I go after that, obviously I need to find the next highest card in the set, and we have down here the king for the aliens. Now I'm going to put those on their position. I'm going to put them on Overwatch, and that's going to apply to all of the hidden prime aliens on the board. And I'm just going to discard that one into this discard pile. I'm building up here as well. So after the king we have a queen. Quite appropriate that it's the commander for the East Highland trade forces. She's just going to move up and sort of hold position behind the forces there, and discard. I could have run her all the way up to the door, but I'll leave her in the as a rear guard there. So after that queen, the next one in the sequence is the 5 of diamonds, which is on these armed scientists, the guys that are defending their prime alien seed that they're genetically investigating. I'll discard that 5, and for them I'm going to put them on Overwatch as well. Now what that means is that they actually get a 2-inch shuffle which they can make. So I could get the ruler out. Obviously I wasn't measuring in here, but I knew that was a 4-inch section, and these guys have got that 4-inch move, which meant they were able to get up to that doorway there. These chaps are going to make a 2-inch shuffle around with their Overwatch token, which allows them that 2-inch movement, just to give them sort of the maximum possible spread of weaponry. I'll just move that token out of the way for the prime aliens there. So moving them in and getting them through into a position where they can put as much firepower on anything that appears through that door. So next up I have the troops over here, which are running on a 4. I'm going to discard that card and just move them up here. Sorry about the noisy tape measure. It's an old Bakelite tape measure. So probably, I don't know how old it is, 100 years old possibly, Sheffield, England. So maybe 50, 60 years old, because it's made of that old Bakelite. And when I do that, it makes a kind of a clunky noise. Please excuse it. So here we go. Because these chaps as well need to open this door, I'm going to move them up into position, and just the first guy is going to use an action to open the doorway there. Now obviously I've got a reveal to make now, because I have an alien. If I bring in a bit more detail on that layout there, I have an alien token in there, so I'm just going to roll a d6, and as I said before, it's going to be like a d3. So a 5 or 6 means there's 3 prime aliens in there. Now they've got Overwatch on, and which means they can sort of move to these chaps here. In fact, I'm just going to keep them out of the line of fire, or maybe I could even do an assault. I'm not sure what I'm going to do actually, but I'll remove the token. I think in this instance they'll move into sneaky positions to be able to assault a bit easier next turn. So if I have a look on the card actually for the aliens, sorry, the prime or the space demons, whatever you want to call them, we can see they have a movement of 4, and in fact I have actually given them long runners as a perk, which you, again, when you build these cards, you can choose from a range of different perks that are appropriate to your models. In fact, that long runners doesn't have to be used by an alien force. I could have put that onto one of these military units on the basis that maybe in their powered armour they had very powerful legs that gave them extra movement. So they have a +2 inch to base move on the Alien Prime because of that long runner perk, which makes them great for assault, really. So I'll just move them around into positions where they might be able to get a better assault next turn. So there we are. Just some basic movement in there, and a tricky situation for those Marines that have just opened the door. Now if I go back out, sorry about the clunky camera, you can see the last card I've got to activate is the spider drone over here. I'll just bring that into view again so you can see it. There he is. That's from Ground Zero Games in the UK. So, spider drone card, I think I had that in this little stack here. Normally actually I might assign them a faster mobility, but this one's just got a standard 4 mobility, which means it can move at the sort of same pace as the Grunts. So I'm going to move it up to its full 8, which is twice its base movement, which means it can come up and sit inside there, just the other side of that doorway. Now I've not put the shielding figure on there as well, but it has got its shield up at the moment. See, there you go. That's one very quick sort of shuffle turn with people coming through doors to get into position, and obviously a first encounter over here with some aliens, although we haven't engaged yet. Now what could happen now on my next turn, of course, is that when I start to pull from those cards to assign the moves again, it could be that these aliens get a lucky drop on the Marines. So I shall now start to dish out cards again. So I'll start with those aliens in that room, and then these chaps here. And you can't see me putting that on there anymore. There you go. And then this enemy unit, the main troopers there, the spider droid, and the commander behind there. In fact, then I'm going to, because these are now activating as a squad in here, as a set of aliens, I'm now going to assign an extra card to all the other tokenized sort of blips of aliens. Right, so now the grand reveal. So that's a nice high card for those. Not such a good situation for those aliens on a 6. Spider droid is activating on a king, that's a good one. An 8 for the guys in the squad there. Now obviously you can see that I've created myself a problem over here in some ways, and if I was playing the game where I had the ability to assign the cards, which is in the optional rules, and here I'm going for a full chaotic assignment of the cards. So in this instance I've got an 8 for the squad and a king for the spider droid. Obviously I want that squad to go first, so that's something they can't do because they're on the 8, so they're going to go after the spider droid, which means he's not going to be able to open that doorway because he doesn't have the facility to do it, because he's not a Grunts guy with an arm. So just continuing on the reveal, that's the commander at the back. She's on a 7, and this squad in here, which were on Overwatch, are actually on a 2. So they actually still remain on Overwatch, by the way, until their activation comes around again. So even though they're on a low number, so they'll probably be activating last. In fact, they will be activating last. They do still get to react. And I've got a 5 for the rest of the aliens, which are on blips. So we've got a couple of interesting situations coming up. Obviously, I've got the king for the spider droid, which is kind of wasted. The door's shut. I've decided I'm not doing any rules, although you could create your own rules on here to allow me to blast the door down, so maybe that's what the spider droid could do. But instead he's just going to activate, and actually I could put him on Overwatch, couldn't I? Which would be an interesting move. When the door opens, he should be able to fire if there's something in sight. So I'm going to do that and pick up an Overwatch token and just pop it on that spider droid. So he'll now be able to react to that model over there. So put that in the discard pile. Next up on the list I have a 10 down here for the space power armor guys. They're not Space Marines, by the way, please ignore me saying that. I don't want to get into trouble because I think people have got into trouble for saying Space Marines before. They're in fact Commonwealth powered armour troops, and nothing to do with Space Marines, which is copyright Games Workshop. Right, so I'm on that 10, I'm going to move them in and I'm going to try and get a shot on the aliens. So the first bit of action here, if I can just find my tape measure, that is. So in we go. They have a movement of 4 as well, because they're still a grunt squad even though they're in powered armour. So some guys at the back haven't been able to move in the full distance. So as I mentioned before, you get a move and then you get a shoot. So they've moved up to this position. I've got 3 guys. That one's being blocked by the one in front, but I've got 3 here who've got a bead on that squad. So in fact that one, actually he could probably shoot over at that one there. So I'm going to say they've got a bead on the entire squad. So I'm going to roll 3 individual attacks, which I've shown before, where you use the paired dice, which means I can roll them all at once. It saves you a lot of time and hassle. So right, so I better work out the stats just quickly. So I can tell straight away the Commonwealth Power Armour, they have a great shoot skill. These are the expert squad, that's why they're a 24-point squad. Shoot of 6, and I'm shooting at the prime aliens, which are a guard of 12. So I need 6 or more on these paired dice. So here we go. So here we go, total of 5, another total of 5, and my last paired one has got a 9. So if I add to that 9 their skill, their shooting of 6, they've obviously hit on a 15. These others haven't hit those aliens, so I've just got 1 hit. And if I was taking this one here, he was the one who was going to be shooting over in this direction. So that model is now waxed. Now the other thing that's happened to this squad of, well, they're not strictly speaking a squad, they're a loose group of aliens, is that they're now suppressed. So you put a suppress token down there, and what that means is that when they activate, they have to use one of their 2 actions to remove the suppression. It just means that there's a lot of firepower coming in from these chaps, which makes it a little bit hard for them to organise themselves in that kind of screaming way that aliens are sprayed all over the place when you shoot at them. Now, in terms of the activation sequence, that means that when they do activate on their 6, the first thing they'll need to do is remove the suppression for 1 action, and then they've got another action which they could move in to an assault, although they don't have 2 actions which is needed to purchase a full assault attack. They could still get in, or they could withdraw to a position where they're out of the firepower. And obviously I'm playing solo here, so I can cheat a little if I want to see how I want to play, but I think I'd actually withdraw them maybe into some cover to regroup with another group of aliens because they've lost one of their number. I think I mentioned before as well the use of medics in this game. Potentially, even with the prime forces here, you could have a medic type of alien in that group, which was able to maybe biometrically heal them somehow or another, and that would make it quite interesting and give them an opportunity, if it was in the area, to come up and heal that waxed model. But for all intents and purposes, that wax model is now out of the game because there's no healing on the prime faction side of this table at all. So when it next activates, that's just going to be removed. Now I could just remove it now because I know that it's dead, but I'll leave it there and follow the sequence, which is to leave models on with the wax token and then to remove them when you activate, because it's just representing that they're out of the game in one way or another. Right, so that's that action done. They've moved in, they've shot, they've suppressed a unit, which is great. If they hadn't suppressed any of those models, they would have been trouble because they would have just been running straight at them into a full assault. And also that's going into the discard pile because that 10's now been used. So the next down after 10, I've got an 8 over here, which is this squad in this location over here, and they're lined up behind the door. Now this will be a bit more interesting, so let me just... So they act, and the guy at the front is going to open the doorway, which will make a satisfying sort of noise, which I haven't got any sound effects here, but slides out of the way. Now, of course, in the game I could also have the doors shutting after them if I wanted to have them shut the door to protect their rear section after they've passed through, but I won't go into that sort of detail. So, right, what's happened? Okay, well, I've revealed now this set of guys here, because there's no doorway in place here, it's open. We've got an open doorway here, and a situation where that spider droid, I've put him on Overwatch, and this squad in here are also on the Overwatch condition. So who's going to shoot first? Well, I've now checked their cards, and I can see that the arm scientists have a skill of only 3, and then I use the skill of the spider drone, which is also used for its shoot, and it has got a skill of 5. So because it's the highest, it's going to shoot first because it's got a higher skill. Now if you had a match there, I would just dice off for it, potentially adding adding their skill to the roll to see which one would fire first. It just keeps it nice and simple. So okay, so spider drone will shoot first because it's reacting to these guys appearing. It had Overwatch already on from its activation where it just picked Overwatch. Those guys have appeared and it rolls its shoot. So it uses its skill to shoot, which is 5. All vehicles use their skill to fire, and it's got a laser rifle which has got a range of 10. Now you can always measure ranges in this game of Gruntz, but I can see already that's well within the 10 range. It's only got one weapon which it's going to fire. You could build these with more than one weapon, but I'm counting the 2 sort of lasers on the front of that drone, which is only just hidden in there, as firing as a single weapon. So here we go, skill of 5, and I know the armed scientists have got a guard of 11, so I need a 6 on this dice roll. Now because it's a snap fire, because it's an Overwatch as a reaction, it's at -1, so I need a 7 in fact. So I've missed. So spider droid has let rip with some laser fire, shot through, and it's hit a side panel or something in there. Now quite often when I build these spider droids, I give them a higher, I make them sort of almost like elite forces, and I give them a skill of 6, but in this instance I've just put it down as a 5. Okay, so nothing hit. Back over now to the armed scientists that are doing their react fire, and we'll see how many have got a bead through here. So again, actually they also have laser rifles with a range of 10, and we can see here we go, 1, 2, 3. This chap can perhaps see the spider drone. So we've got 3 which I'm going to fire through onto the, if I can move over the camera so you can see just a bit more detail. I've got 3 here which I'm going to fire on the trade forces because I want to try and suppress them, and in fact I've got 1 here who's just got a bead through to hit the spider droid. So 3 against the East Hyden trade unit and 1 against the spider droid. I know that spider droid is going to be hard to crack though because of its shielding. So first of all I'll take the 3, so I'll find myself 3 paired dice really quickly. Roll those, and I've got some fantastic rolling going on there again. So I know that's a hit, That's a hit. In fact, they're all hits, so I've got 3 hits on the East Hyden Trade Forces shooting through down this section. Now I know the damage of my laser rifle is 6, and I just need to know the soak factor, which is how much damage the East Hyden Trade Forces can take. And I have the cards here, so I can see their soak is in fact 12. So I need 6s again, a total of 6, not 6s on each dice, but I'm totaling up these dice. So here's a 5, that's not going to do anything, that's going to do a wound, and that's going to wax a model. So they've equalled the soak of 12 by rolling 6 plus 6, and this guy's got over that by an extra point. Now that's actually done 13 damage against a guy with a soak of 12. You don't spread that extra wound around, it would just hit that particular one. So 2 of these models are now waxed in that set, and obviously I'm going to make it the first 2 in the line. So all I've done is just to show you there, I've just put the wax tokens down against the 2 models in the front. Now I've got another shot coming from the remaining guy that was going to shoot over that way, and the guard of the spider drone is actually 14, which I'm looking at on this card, and I know their shoot. So I've rolled a 9, and actually I may have actually done that wrong last time, but the shoot is only 4. So I rolled a 9. Oh no, I hit last time because I rolled all those amazing dice rolls for their shooting. So shoot is only 4 because they're just scientists really. I gave them a low shoot, which is below the sort of average of 5, which would be an average shooting skill. So I forgot what I rolled, and I'm in the middle of it, so I'm going to roll again. 7 plus his shoot of 4 is 11. That's not enough to hit a guard of 14, so his shot was a bit of a hopeless fire at the spider drone as it appeared. Right, so that's their react fire, which they've used up now, so I remove that, remove those 2 Overwatch tokens as they reacted. Now when you're playing a full game on a big open board, 2 things apply. Firstly, it would be much quicker than this because I'm explaining everything in detail, and it does slow you down. I've only got a limited brain power as well, so doing the filming, talking, moving the models and trying to get it all right is kind of difficult on the old brain, on the noggin. But so firstly, bigger game on a large open table, it would run a lot faster and there wouldn't be such fiddly movement. Obviously this is a corridor battle here and it does take its time, and it takes its toll on my brain power when I'm trying to work out all the factors involved on my own. So they're now done. In terms of the activations, obviously all I did with these chaps was open the door, and they got shot at the moment they opened the door, and I used the react fire sequence there, starting with this guy. But those were the active unit at the moment, those East Hyden Trade Forces. But because they're now waxed, well, they've got 2 models waxed, only 1 model would need to be waxed for the unit to enter into suppressed condition. So they're now, I'll put it on that side so you can see it, they're now suppressed, which means when they next activate, their activation's ended by the way now because they've been shot at after they open the doorway, they will have to spend an action to remove the suppression and kind of remove the shaken up condition that they're in. Fortunately they've got a commander behind them, and I'll be able to show you one of the actions she can do. In fact I can do that right now because she's on sequence 7 and there's no others that are as high as that on the board at the moment. So she's going next. Now when she activates, she can't heal because there's no magic healer or anything, although you can have a medic in the game. But the commanders can take one of 3 different actions. They can do a take the pain, which allows them to basically remove a suppression from a unit. That means she's focusing all her energy on saying, hey guys, get yourself back, regroup, some sort of method of shouting down the comms channel or just generally helping them out, which means she sacrifices one of her actions to just simply shake these guys back into good condition again. It removes that suppression, and obviously she's close to them so she can do that, but normally they would only be able to do that within their mental range, and her mental is 7, so you'd have to be within that 7 inches of her for her to be able to do that, take the pain and remove that suppression token. She can also give them a push move with an action which would move them on an additional 4 inches, but she's just going to give them take the pain. That means they've removed suppression, although the danger is now, of course, is that there is actually another unit over here that's going to activate on 2 when they take their action this turn, which means they're highly likely to get shot at again. And we've got a unit over the back here, which actually I think I forgot last turn. Because again, that's a problem faced with doing this on your own. I think I didn't even move those guys over the back there while I was focusing all my energies on thinking about the game and how it works. Okay, so without further ado, I was at 7 with this lady. 5, which is the next in the sequence, 6. So I've actually got these aliens over here. So now we can see what happens when we activate a unit that's already been suppressed. So the first thing I do, I activate them. There's been no healing done around here, so I can see this guy has a wax token beside him. He's removed along with the tokens. That's scratch 1 prime alien. The other 2, they want to activate. The first thing they do is remove the suppression token, so they're now suppressed. Now we could move in and start an assault here, which would be an interesting move for them, considering the low numbers and they're not being able to sort of charge down into them. They'll just be engaging. In fact, what I'm going to do is move them back out of the way. They've got a high speed movement, and withdraw from that overwhelming incoming fire from these guys to regroup with some other aliens over here. So I'm going to shift them. As I said before, they have 4 inch normally, but these guys have got a +2 to their base move. That means they could actually move a total of 12 inches if they did a double move. So very fast moving aliens. When you double that base move, they really do move fast and shift. So they're going to move 8 inches into some sort of cover around here. And in fact, while I'm at it, because they've now grouped together with this one over here, and because this doorway is open, we're moving into that area, I'm going to dice as well, remove their activation card. I'm going to dice to see. So I've rolled a 6, which is another, on a D3 basis, that's another 3. So they've regrouped with a larger section of aliens over here. And because I'm just playing this sort of scenario that I've put together, I'm letting this unit just become 1 again now. So they'll activate on their own because they've grouped together. Now you can actually move similar units together. So if I had 2 sets of these East Hyden trade forces, and they had the same squad build, so the same weaponry and the same statistics, if during a day, during a game, you managed to lose some forces from one, you could actually join that together as a larger squad, so they can sort of group together as an action, which means you can sort of build together older squads that maybe have lost a few figures, or build a bigger squad from them during the actual game. What that means is obviously they then activate as 1 unit, which in some ways is good because you're getting a whole lot of figures moving at once and rebuilding that squad, but in other ways it means you've got 1 less activation, which can mean you're not countering then against the enemy as efficiently as you were before when you had more squads on the table. However, it does mean you can boost their numbers back up to a level where the squad is more complete and less likely to break when they take more than half the number left in them in terms of incoming damage. So apologies again if I start to ramble or drift. It's actually very hard to be able to explain the game, remember everything that's going on, and maintain some kind of sensible dialogue without spinning off. Maybe as I do this more I'll get better at it, but I'm just sort of drifting along now, trying to work out where I'm moving next. So I moved those guys over to here, and that was the they went on the 6 of hearts. The next guy up is a 5 here, which is representing all of these other sort of tokens. So I think what I could do now, since I'm at that stage of the game where things are moving along, I could start to move tokens into different locations just to sort of bring in some more firepower. So I'll move these guys around into here. So as I said before, the aliens have that extra ultimate agility perk, which means they're moving a lot faster. And I'll just move these chaps here. Now, all I'm going to say while I'm moving those in the sort of hidden kind of movement is that when they reach the door they need to stop, and on the next activation the door can open, either by the fact that they've got some intelligence or they've found some kind of way around through the door. And these ones will just move up around this way too. So by moving those into there, I'm going to reveal them now. Roll another d6. 1. So that one is only just one solo chap on his own that's come round the corner. Now these didn't have Overwatch on them, these Marines down here, so they're not going to react. I will get rid of some of those dice in there. It's a handy place to roll them in there without losing them. I tell you what, if I was demoing this on the big open table, that would be a problem, seeing the dice spinning off in random directions. So obviously I'd activated those as well, so I can get rid of that card. I've just got 2 left now, so I've got over the back there those trade forces running on 3, and then these in the middle here that are on 2. So all I'm going to do with those ones is just run them in to that doorway. So double move, which means they're moving a total of 8 inches. Let's just shuffle them in there. Because they've double moved, they haven't got an action left to open that doorway, so at the beginning of next turn they can do that. And the other thing I can do in here now is do 2 more reveals, because we've got this token here behind this row and these chaps here, so I reveal that one. Oh, another 3. Now I've built in a factor for why these primes aren't killing these armed forces, and that's that they've sprayed their suits in some kind of pheromone that makes them almost invisible or something to the aliens, that of course they're trying to weaponize, which is the classic move. So as I said, I've done those on the 3. I'm now doing this squad in here, which were these arm scientists in their hazmat suits. They're going on 2. Now what they're going to do is try and mass their fire now with a concentrated fire against the spider drone. Or they could go on, they could hide because they've got an opportunity to get out of the way, but I think they're going to take that chance to try and take down the most lethal of the opponents they can see here. So just have to think about that for a moment as I pull my rules together. Essentially, when you're concentrating fire, you're only rolling 1 pair of dice. So get the dice out ready, and flip to the concentrate fire rules where there's a little table. This is actually easy to remember, but I just want to show you the table anyway so that you can see it's relatively easy to pull together a concentrated fire shot. This is where I flip through and I can't find my table when I need it, which means I should have a quick reference guide, shouldn't I? Which I have actually. Reminds me I should have shown that earlier. But so here's the concentrate fire table, and I can just see that I'm going to have a front row, because you can't shoot through. The bases of the guys in front are keeping a blocking line of sight. So I can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 models that are going to fire at the spider drone, which is the other side of that doorway there. 4 together means +2 to the shoot and damage roll. So +2 to this. I know the shoot is already 6. So I've added 5 to that. So they've hit on 11. Unfortunately, the spider drone has a guard of 14, very high. So they've only hit on 11 and they've missed. So unfortunately for them, that's their action done. Now, the standard process in Grunts is that you take a movement first and then shoot, and there is an optional rule, so you can play and allow that sequence to happen first or second. Now normally in a normal open game I would only follow the process of movement and then shooting. It just keeps it simple, stops people forgetting whether they've moved or not, or whether they take a shoot and another move. But in the instance of a corridor fight like this, I'm going to allow them to do their move action after shooting. It just makes a lot more sense when you're playing a game with a huge amount of terrain to hide behind. So they've taken a shot and they're then going to scatter, which means they've got a 4-inch move left. They haven't got the full 8 inches because they haven't got that double move to move their 4 inches twice. So obviously they're going to get out of the way. I'm going to spread them out down here, and this chap's just going to go behind. So there is a squad coherency as well. Yes, so for the squad coherency, you need to stay within 3 inches of your squad leader. Now I've made the squad leader this chap over here, which you can vaguely see, but he's got his arm up, and I've just made sure these chaps are all generally within 3 inches of him, and that's the squad coherency, which if you break, you have to kind of get back together again afterwards. There's rules covering that, especially if you might lose a couple of models and leave a straggler out the back somewhere. So they've taken a shot, moved out the way, failed on their shooting unfortunately, but they have kind of revealed these chaps down here, and they did also suppress this squad in here, although the commander was then able to remove the suppression. And we're done on the table generally. All the cards have been used and all the squads activated. So, oh, there's one thing I've just noticed there. I could probably reveal those ones now as well, and I don't know why, but I'm rolling high all the time at the moment. So there's another 5, which means there's another 3 aliens there. I'm making it very hard. I don't know why I'm rolling so high, but it seems to be working for the primes at the moment. So now I'm issuing the cards. I've got a few more forces to issue them to. One to that squad there. Well, not a squad, a grouping, a pod or something. One there, squad there, squad there. Command model at the back. Oh, lonesome alien down there as well. Oh, and the hazmat group too. So now the big reveal to see the card sequence. Well, they've got an 8, so that's quite good. Oh, he's got a 9, although he's out on his own there. This unit activating on 3. Oh, I missed the spider droid down there as well, so there's 2 squads in there. The spider droid activating on his own, and the unit of East Hyden. Well, that's nice, they've got an ace, so they're going first. We've got a 9 for the spider droid. This squad on a queen. A nice high number over there as well. So there we have it. Oh, just the commander here. Oh, and I've done it again. Should have put a card out over there too. So they're activating on a queen too. So here we go. Firstly, I've been very lucky. I've got 2 aces there, and they're both on my squad. So they're both on the East Highland Trade Forces. So I just need to have a quick look to remind myself what the boon is for those 2 different aces. So for the ace of clubs, you get basically 2-inch to base move for a grunts or vehicle moves this turn. They find a rapid route and extra wind across the battlefield rapidly. So that's for the ace of clubs, which is these chaps, and the ace of diamonds, which obviously it activates first in terms of the card sequence. The ace of diamonds is a lucky strike. The squad or vehicle unit has got +2 to range attack rolls this turn. Sorry, I'm reading that to myself, I'm not showing you, but it's over here. So she's also going first, which is great, because what she can do is activate first as the commander on this ace, and then what she's going to do is give this squad a push move. So even though it's not their activation, she's giving them an extra push in the battlefield to move forward. Now of course they will lose their 2 waxed tokens, which means 2 of their number have been left behind, killed by incoming fire. So I'll just take those off the table, pile them up over here out of the way sort of thing. And the remainder of the force, which is there's another 4 models in there, they get a push move, and that's 1 standard move of 4 inches. Now that's going to get them through the doorway. and just about through there. That's not going to get through, is it? 4 inches, actually that guy be a little bit further back here, and so with this chap. So in terms of the battle raging over here, I'll produce the zoom in, sorry about the movement. So you can just see she activated, she stayed where she was, but she used a push move which she could have done up to her mental range, which is 7 inches, so she's used that on the Grunt squad, given them that push up, which is an out of activation sequence for them. Now it just so happens they're activating next on the ace, the ace of clubs, but they may have been activating further down the line, and they may have to wait before they have their go. But it just so happens they are activating next, so they've had that additional move. They've had to run over their poor fallen comrades, which are now waxed and out of the game. Her activation's over. Now, interestingly enough, she had a shot as well, but she hasn't really got anything in line because of the blocking spider droid and these guys in the way, so she didn't really have anything to shoot at. But I will move her up actually before I activate those, because she's taken one action to give them a push move, and then she's moving up herself just to get in behind the spider droid. That's our activation finished, and I shall bring the camera down so it's not wobbling all over the place anymore. Right, steady camera. So next up I'm activating the squad. Now what's interesting, of course, is last turn they did have their suppression applied. They also lost a couple of models, but by having the commander close to hand, they've been able to recover from that, both from the push move she's given them and the take the pain action, which allowed them to remove the suppression before it was their go. So I'm now activating them. I've got 4 guys here that could move and shoot, and they're in a bit of a tricky situation. They've got swarming primes on both sides of them, and they know that there's some mad scientists down here from the ARM faction with weaponry, with ranged weaponry, who've just ducked out of the way after shooting them. So I'm not sure where they're going to go. They're in a bit of a tricky spot. I think they know radio-wise that they've got their comrades over here, the guys with the power armor, so they'll probably focus their fire up around this way. I'll just bring them around. Obviously the other thing is they don't want to engage with these because hand to hand, because they know how lethal they are. They don't have any chance really in terms of hand to hand fighting with the aliens. But if they were charging in, they'd have a reasonable go, but basically, as in the movie, the assault factor for these is much higher than the East Hyden trade forces. In fact, I'll just get those details out. So the East Hyden trade forces that have gone in there have got an assault of 4. The prime aliens have got an assault of 7. So that's sort of a reasonable factor, an increase, which means more likely to win in a hand-to-hand situation. So they've moved around the corner and they're just going to fire. So I've got 4 of them. I'll get 4 pairs of dice. So there we go. Now I know the primes have got a guard of 12 and that my shooting skill is 5. So in fact they're hard to hit too, so I need 7s on these. So here we have 1 hit, we have another hit, so that's not bad. Out of the 4 I've had 3 hits there, and the prime aliens, like the grunts, only have 1 wound each, unless we're talking about the queen one, which is the encounter for later on. So damage wise, the East Hyden trade forces are shooting with auto rifles which have a range of 8, which I didn't really need to factor in because they're in close range there, and damage of 5. Now the prime aliens are quite tough. Actually, I think I've given them Ahsoka 14 in the design, but probably Ahsoka 13 would be fairer, especially since now with my damage of 5 I've got to roll 9s to do anything. But here we go. That's just a factor of when you play these games and you're trying to balance them out, and the fact that Grunts itself allows you to design any unit types. Once you've played them a couple of times, you may wish to balance them out, and looking at that, I think what I was doing there when I was designing those in the Grunts barracks application is I was thinking to myself, well, they have got no ranged attack, although I could have given them a sort of a acid spit. But because they haven't got the ranged attack, I gave them a really high soak as a sort of a factor of them being ultra tough aliens. But in terms of gameplay, probably a 14 soak for those is a little bit on the high side. So as I said, I'm doing 5 damage with my auto rifle. They've got 14, so I need a 9 to do 1 point of damage. So that's 1 waxed. In fact 2, so that's not bad. I am rolling high today. So I know that one's not a wound. That's 9 damage plus the 5, which is 14. 12 damage, obviously, plus 5 is well over that. So I've waxed 2 models in there. Now, the squad size normally in Grunts, you can build squads from ranges of squads of 4 right up to a squad of 10 in size. The average, which is what I usually stick to, is 6. And that was basically based around the Ground Zero games packs that used to be supplied. Well, they still supply them, but they supply them in a standard size of 6 models plus 2 sort of standard, 2 models which have sort of assault weaponry, and the other 6 in the pack would be standard squaddies. And with Grunts you can add squad attachments which have higher powered weapons. I haven't done that on here, but you'd normally maybe have an attachment on there that would have some kind of larger assault weapon like a machine gun or something, or a light machine gun, an LMG that he could use against them. I haven't built that into that squad, but I have sort of built them to the standard squad size of 6. And where I was getting at that is that these don't really have a standard squad size, these aliens in this game, because it's a scenario driven one with the blip counters that are being revealed. But they still follow the same rules, which means if the squad size is halved from 1 source of damage, which I've done there, I've taken out 2, they have to make an immediate mental check or they're going to run. Now that even applies to sort of deadly aliens, as with these ones, because I've not given them a perk which allows them to ignore any kind of mental tests. So they're going to have to take a mental test. I'm rolling my dice in my hand and I just need to check. I've given them a mental of 6. So I'll just roll for this now. I won't go into any of the details on the rolls. And fortunately for them, they've managed to roll 6, so they need to roll equal to or under that mental statistic, and they've done that. Now you can, if I was playing strictly, you can factor in the incoming damage as well, but I haven't done that in this instance. I've just used the basic shooting. So those wax counters stay on there, sorry. When they activate, they're going to have to be removed. He's also suppressed because of all that incoming fire, which means he can only take 1 action on his turn. And that's not a bad outcome for them, because they've basically locked down one of their flanks that were coming in against them. They're also reasonably well covered from anything coming from that direction. And behind them, they know they've still got a spider droid which has still taken no damage, and although I haven't got it on the board at the moment, its shield is still up, its dome shield is still up over it as well, so it's very hard to damage at the moment with a soak of 15 while that shield is up. So I'm going to take a pause here, which means I'm going to upload this video as it is now and continue this fight in a part 2. So something to watch out for in the next 3 or 4 days when I bring this up as a part 2 video. That's just a starting taster. I think I don't know what I've done, but maybe I've done about an hour or something chatting already, and I'm losing my voice. So I'm going to do this as a part 2. I'm going to leave the entire table layout set up as it is, and then come back to it in the next day or so to finish off the fight, so you can see what goes on there. So I'm going to leave this as it is. The next person that would be up, obviously, after those 2 aces for this squad would be the next one in line, which I don't think there's any kings down. The Hearts is the highest in the suit rank, so in fact it's these hazmat suited guys that are going next. So there's going to be a bit of a shock, I think, for the East Hyden forces there when they find that someone's attacking them from their flank. Although I think probably what I would do with these is that I'm going to try and take out that spider droid again by grouping their fire, which just makes it a bit easier for them longer term, because that spider droid's a deadly vehicle with such high soak. So there you go. I hope I haven't rambled too much. I think probably the best thing to do is comment on this video, and if there was something you couldn't understand or I'd gone through a bit too quickly, I'll then cover it in the part 2, and it gives you an opportunity to question something in the rules. Obviously these rules are as per the game, published game on the War Games Vault, so if you're one of those really geeky super rules meisters that wants to point out that something's completely wrong and how could that possibly work, then it's probably not worth posting, because the rules are now published. I'm not going to be able to fix them for you if it's not right for you. However, I think they're a fun set of rules to play, and hopefully you can see that from what I've done here, and hopefully you'll also be able to trust me in the basis that they don't take this long to play when you're playing with a colleague or a friend, because you can just get stuck in and learn the rules quickly, and you're not having to speak into a microphone like a lunatic on your own. Okay, so thanks for listening in. Amazing if you got all the way to the end, and please do comment and question, and if you wanted to see something else, or you want me to zoom in more or something in the next battle layout when I do part 2, I will do that. Thanks for listening.